Welcome back to the Impact and Influence podcast. Today we have Steffen Dziczek. He's an LA-based actor, stand-in, drummer, investor, my personal mentor. And Steph, thanks for joining us today.
Oh man, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, thank you very much for having me, for coordinating coasts and schedules, and yeah, so really grateful to be here with you.
Of course, absolutely. Before the show, we were talking, and then you told me as an actor that you're hired and fired every day. And I think that's something the audience could really learn a lot from. I think everyone could learn from that, actually. How do you describe that? What do you think about that?
Well, it's basically just the truth, as far as what I do. As far as an actor, I mean, if you're a day player, you may have a daily contract, you go, you fulfill that, you do your thing on set, and you're a free agent, Now, obviously there's other contractual, you could be on a weekly, or whatnot, but basically what I do as far as the main bulk of my work is standing in for other actors, for male actors. And therefore, we are literally pink slipped every day. We get a little receipt, of our hours and anything like that. And, it's like you're invited back the next day, but technically you're hired and fired. Like, you get a call after you leave,
Now, would you say...
Yeah, so that's like the logistical part of it, right? But the other part is like taking that and it's like keeping that in the forefront of your mind, like you're literally hired and fired every day. So obviously, to me, that incentivizes me to bring the best that I can bring that day. So that's kind of what it forces me to do.
Absolutely. I mean, would you say that actors are like the ultimate entrepreneurs?
Yeah, they are. They are. They got to be creative, think on their feet, and they're just.
Well, it seems like that same hustle mindset. I mean, an entrepreneur, it's like you're constantly. I feel like it's a sort of similar hired and fired every day mentality.
Yeah, it's one day at a time. It's like, you may. You can have a very dry spell. The Nebraska years, or Nebraska days, like where you're in the middle of nowhere and nothing's going on, and you got to train, right? Like, what are you doing in between your gigs? Are you auditioning? Are you working on a monologue? Are you, writing your own stuff? Are you producing your own stuff? Shooting your own stuff? Like,
investing in yourself.
Investing yourself in between, and your skill set, sharpening your creative act, and your business practice too, because it's like you're balancing. You could be a great talent, but if you're not good at business or follow through, or communicating, it's like it could reduce your chances of success. And again, with that, I mean, success, you have to define that for yourself. It's very ambiguous.
Sure.
It's like, am making a living at it? Is that successful? Is it, getting one acting job a year because you love it? It doesn't matter, and you fit it in when you can. But it's definitely an entrepreneurial kind of thing. It's all on you, and then you have to build your team, and your team, your agent, your managers, your connections, and also to. You have to build your support group too.
Okay.
So it's not just all work related, but it's also your self-support, because it's a very tough, lonely, financially unstable journey. Let's be honest. And there's no guarantee that you'll get to play, be creative for a living. It's like, if that ends up happening, it's almost like that's the bonus. That's the bonus. you know.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about success, because we all define success on our own terms. So everybody's definition of success is different in their own minds. So that's really interesting. As far as getting the right work to do, what do you think is the key to that? Do you think it's relationships? Is it the human element? Is it trust?
Well, the right work, I would say first is having clarity, right, with yourself on what work you want to pursue, or lend yourself or your gifts or your talents to. That's the first part. Because, if you're in something enough, work will most likely happen. It'll come to you, but what work do you want to lend yourself to? And then to do more of that, either, you can self-create, or, like the work that I do, the key is building very good, strong quality relationships, so having the clarity with self on what you want to do, and then, seeing how you can get there, and then to maintain that work is fostering that relationship, building, they call it brand, maybe a brand, but that's kind of, lingo, but I think it's about reputation as well. As a reputation, it's like, you're very successful, you're a closer, right? They bring you in and things get tough, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's like when, when they gotta, when there's a major motion picture, and somebody may fit me, and people know of my reputation and my work, it's like, all right, well, I knew what I wanted to do. I've built those muscles of relationships and work ethic and, quality. And then, that connection is made, and I get to do more of that, of the work that I want to do. So, start with the self, and then you start building that relationship, that reputation, and it kind of snowballs, from there.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it seems like over the years, then that reputation, that constant just, doing good work and building up that trust has really become your personal brand, right? I feel like nowadays people try to formulate the personal brand and then, try to work back into that a little bit. Seems like you've done it the opposite way, which is really interesting. What's your philosophy?
Because
Your onset and building these relationships and the hard work that you do. What's your philosophy towards that?
all right, let's go to the first question. What was the first part of the question? It was like 3 parts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go back.
I think they were all great. I want to hit on all of them. So let's start with that first one. What was that first one again?
Yeah, no worries. So as far as personal branding, that seems to play a strong role. And one thing I was saying is a lot of people seem to formulate their brand and then try to live up to what they've created. Whereas you've put in the hard work over 10 plus years building your own philosophy and coming up to a point where people have that ultimate trust in you, and you have built that reputation.
Yes. So I think it's about being flexible, and each time we go through anything in life, I think we discover more and more about ourselves, and we get more and more clear if we're open to it. I think if the problem with going the other way, and I'm going to build a brand and then shove it out into the world, is it's like, okay, I have the knowledge, I have the dream, I have the wish, I have a very unclear vision as far as, or it looks good on paper, right? You have a plan, a brand plan, basically, but it's not tested, so allowing oneself to remain, and this word has just smashed me in the face this year, is curious. Right? Curiosity leads us to find, as opposed to having a fixed vessel, a fixed vision, a fixed brand, it's like allow itself to interact with these circumstances and situations, and it informs it. And therefore that relationship with the, internally and externally will grow. And therefore it's I think it becomes more authentic, but it takes churning through those circumstances to really find its truth and its heartbeat. It's great to cast a vision or be like, okay, this is what I want to be, but it's like, don't be afraid to adjust along the way, and that to me is tough. Like I'm very black and white thinking. Like I'm very polarized. It's like yes or no, or black or white. And it's through my own, as of several years ago, me discovering more about myself and really getting to know myself, it's like, no, right? Bruce Lee, like water, right?
You
like water, baby.
Right.
You like water, right? And yeah, if I push that water and I focus it, I can move I can do anything, but it's like, go ahead, it can move as well. And then when it needs to rush and to do something, it gets it done. And so that's kind of been like my philosophy. I thought I started off with a guess, a theory, and then test it out, but it took me a long time to learn. I was a fixed self and smashing and smashing and smashing and losing. And it's like, wait a minute, what if I'm just open to suggestion, from, all these circumstances and people and situations. And that's, I think, allowed to inform the brand or the philosophy.
Absolutely. And I love Bruce Lee, by the way. And the reference to the heartbeat, it's interesting because I think a lot of people might not think of a journey like that as truly something that's living and breathing. And I really like your thought process and path with that. That it comes back to a story I read recently about independent thinking. That I think that's one thing that people can take away from this conversation is it's hard to pull yourself out of the day to day and think a little bit differently. Even sometimes, and I can't remember this effect, but when, some people that believe they're thinking independently are actually thinking with the crowd. So how do you stay independent minded in this whole process, of life?
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
It's a loaded question. I know.
That is a really loaded question, but I guess the first thing that comes to mind is independent thinking. Remove the competition from it. Right? Are you thinking independently because you just, you don't want to engage, you just have to be different? Are you looking for validation or recognition because I got to think different? Right? I got to be different, right? I'm an individual.
I never thought about that way.
Right? It's like, is that the motive behind it? Or is it truly just like, oh, am I being honest and I just see a different way of doing something, or I have a different idea and I just present my truth and that's just who I am and that's just how I think, that's where my mind goes, right? So, and also too, what is independent thinking? I think the best independent thinking comes from, again, coming back to, is curiosity. It's probably, you're a master at asking questions. I mean, you're doing the podcast, asking. I mean, if we've talked many times. I'm like, man, if there's anybody that has a PhD in questioning, or curiosity, it's you. You find wonderful things. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's why that's one of the great lessons from knowing you and being on this journey with you, is that's, professionally and personally, I learned that from you. But it's, again, like, what's your motive behind independent thinking? And then just remaining curious, and even when, because when you put judgment in there, it's creating distancing, and that's not, I think, true independent thinking, because you're creating judgment. So kind of being aware of what's surrounding it will kind of help with I guess, independent thinking.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to something you said before about finding clarity in life. And I think that might be. I feel like it's something a lot of people in the we're in our 30s. A lot of people in their 30s seem to struggle with at all ages. Really, I could see it happening. But what do you say to somebody that's looking to find clarity in their life? How should they even consider approaching that?
Question everything.
Okay.
Everything.
What do you mean by that?
Question your career, question your relationships, question your thinking, question, get to know and find yourself, your authentic self.
Okay.
Which I truly believe, is we're in this world, we grow up as kids and we have these big influences, whether it's parents and siblings and whatnot, and it's like we kind of adapt and mold, and depending on how you grew up, it's like maybe you kind of took on and you're trying to please others and you don't even realize it, and you're like, why do things in life feel so empty, and especially when you get to the point, like for a lot of my clarity is, I had everything that I wanted, I thought I wanted, and it's like, why do I still feel empty? So question everything and sometimes it takes a bump in the road to kind of stop you, because we just get in that cycle, we get that go, 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 and we never stop and reflect. We never stop. And the gift of COVID, I know, has a major impact on me, because it's like, I live, by myself, and I live here alone in Los Angeles. And it's like, I had 3 industries that came to a halt, that disappeared, 3 streams of income that disappeared overnight, with the future being uncertain. And it's like, I had to check in with myself.
I can only imagine.
And it's scary. Who wants to ask and dive into here? No, it's easier and more interesting, and to keep it out here,
Absolutely.
Out there. Blame others. Oh, the world's uncertain and this and that. It's like, great, okay. But you have to get inside. So question everything, question your ideas about things. I just watched a wonderful video of oh gosh, the actor from Sound of Metal, Ahmed or thing. Oh man, I'm butchering it. Maybe we could put it in show notes.
All right.
But he did an open therapy session, and his therapist, he had a thought of like, oh, the world's, who knows when the world's going to come back to normal, and the fear behind that. And it's like, okay, well, let's challenge that. What are the facts that the world's never going to be the same or never be normal again, right? So if you truly fact check your thoughts, which I thought this was really brave of him to like openly share this 7-minute section of their session together.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look this up.
Thoughts are not real. They're not real at all. And you can fact check it, and so I saw that. I was like, yeah, that's again finding clarity or finding peace and serenity. Is like, okay, well, that's just a thought, but it's not real. And so, as far as like finding clarity, is start to question everything, and it's truly, I think being reflective, that's what I've started to do. Like before this session, I did a wonderful body scan meditation, a nice little 6-minute session to kind of check in, to get clear and to get still, so I could be, as clear-headed as possible for our time together. And
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's in the stillness, it's in the stillness that you can actually ask those questions. And most of the time everything is just snowballing, and we wonder why we're out of control. We feel out of touch, we need to check in and get that clarity. And maybe it's actually more about clarity is about subtraction than addition.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by that? Tell me
overall. Well, So clarity, it's like if I'm trying to wear so many different hats to so many different people and obligations, I may be overextended. And what's the motive behind that? Maybe, maybe
People
I don't know how to
pleasing
be with
state.
myself. I'm a people pleaser, right?
Yeah.
And I'm people pleasing for many, many years. And it's like living that life of outside of self. It's like I'm wearing all these hats, you know, it's just a bunch of noise. And so it's like, oh, wow, what are the things that really, when you have clarity with what I really want to do and who I really am, you can actually subtract probably a lot of that, and or keep it in its right place, to where you're not overextended, you know?
Yeah.
So I think subtraction is a very beautiful thing. Anybody who I've seen that's very, successful. I mean, what is it, Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook? Like he wore the same thing for a year, just like subtracting choice out of his wardrobe, right? Brought that.
Oh, sure. And
that
it worked incredibly.
yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. Or just any of that, that subtraction. We try, I started to follow a minimalist page on Instagram, and it's very interesting. It's like, how much do we really need? What are our needs versus our wants? That'll help with clarity. What are your needs versus wants? And are your wants way outweighing your needs? Because I think truly we don't need a lot in life. The basics: food, shelter, clothing, but just what about personal nourishment? What nourishes you? And the clarity came to me recently as far as defining passion versus purpose.
Okay.
Right? Like that's a tremendous conversation to have. Because for me, I was like, passion. And passion for me was built out of intensity, right? So if I felt something intensely, I'm like, this is my purpose. This is my purpose. Where there's a lady that I follow, Mel Robbins, and I'll give her a little Instagram post this nod, because she defined it as passion is what fills us up, like what I do for Steffen, And so it's like when I play drums, when I golf, when I act, when I go for a hike, work out, like that fills me up. Mm-hmm. But it stops there, right? But purpose is what's going out into the world. What am I doing that's going to be for others? And I never thought about it that way. And it was kind of a 180 in the clarity of going, wow, I have a boatload of passions on my plate. And no wonder why this other section of my journey was somewhat missing. And it's like, now I can really have the clarity to sit down and go, what purpose can I have going forward that I want to give out to the world? Not that me being a part of entertainment or playing in bands or anything and entertaining folks has not been that, but the clarity, the mental and spiritual clarity that comes with, wow, what do I want to give out to the world?
I love that. I can feel it right here.
Wait, this is the heart, yeah.
Other side.
Yeah.
I love it. No worries. Obviously you're really well read. Those who don't really understand set life and what it's like to be on a Hollywood set, there seems to be a lot of downtime. So you find yourself reading a lot, I assume.
Oh yeah.
So do you like to read, or have you read, or are you reading right now?
I always read. My nose is always in a book.
How many books do you read a year, do you think, on average?
Probably 20 plus books a year. This year would be even more, just because, just COVID, the downtime, I read all the time. Maybe I'm a professional reader. I don't know. Maybe That's a better title, you know, professional consumer of the words. I don't know. Yeah, but I definitely read. You know, what's funny is I was very resistant as a young kid to read. To be honest, it was all TV, and I can remember there was a book. I don't remember what was about. It was about like beavers or something, like something in nature. But I remember when I picked up this book and I started reading it, I was like, it was like finally it lit up my imagination. And I remember driving my mom nuts, like reading out loud to her, just because it was like the joy of reading and the imagination and the page. It lit up, you know.
Wow.
It was like a piece of music for my imagination. And ever since then, it was like, oh, reading is cool. I love reading. But I hated it for, I don't know what grade that was. I was still super young, but yeah. I remember that click, you know, that turning point, you know. Mm-hmm. And ever since then, I've been a huge fan of reading. So, yeah. You asked, what am I reading currently?
Yeah. What's some of the books that you've read that have really just, you know, lit your soul on fire, that just made you so excited to just be alive, attack work, and do your best, or attack life? I mean, whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, one of the most the tipping point books for me in my journey was several years back. A friend recommended "Ego is the Enemy" by Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
And it's part of a series. I think it's The Obstacle's the Way, and then Ego is the Enemy is the center one, and then Stillness is the Key is like the newest in the trilogy.
Okay.
That comes from the Stoic mind, the Stoics. You know, it's very Stoic based kind of playbook, but that one really kind of challenged me to a level of maturity across the board, a level of ownership. It kind of maybe even planted the seed of that passion versus purpose, you know, make a noise versus just doing the work, right? Seeking recognition, whereas the work itself is the fulfilling part, you know. So it really started to level up my maturity and my thinking about questioning everything to gain clarity on what is my relationship with self and all these other aspects of my life. And kind of what blocks it is the ego, is the false self that I have unconsciously created, because that's how I became me. It's a false part of self. There is a part of the ego that protects you. You know, ego serves both ways. It manifests itself to kind of protect you in ways. But there's a point in life where I think you can let the ego die, you know, and it becomes actually an intangible block to fulfillment of self, of relationships, of quality of life, of rigorous self-honesty. I mean, it blocks so much because it's a bunch of noise. It's almost like because it came from outside in.
That, you know, competitiveness that you were speaking about before, you know, that ego seems to be a bit of competitiveness within inside of you that you manifested in the wrong way. So
it's a wild Mustang that, like, you have, it can be the death of you or the gift of you, because it can push you and drive you when you know how to use it. You know, I'm still learning at my age, you know, how to like correctly apply it. You know, I'm more or less at that point. I'm trying to unravel it, you know. But then there's points where, like, yeah, I got to push my ego to protect me, to move me, to motivate me, you know, or where it's healthy in the gym, you know.
There you go.
Push you more reps, right? Like, you get angry at it, like you know.
Get
Or
mad
it's
at
like,
it. That's right.
you know, the part of me is like, oh, I need rest and that. No, I want to push through and get this project done, you know, and give it my all, you know. So there are points where, yeah, the ego gives you those thrusters, you know, those boosters. But it's a really fine art, I think.
Absolutely. In talking about motivation, it's like, and I want to hit on that for a second because I think a lot of people need some help in the motivation category. Now, especially during COVID-19, it's hard to stay in contact with people. It's hard to stay motivated to even reach out to people. I feel like, just the days go on and on and on. Tell me a little bit about that. How do you keep relationships up during these times?
Connect, reach out,
You do that.
don't isolate.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, maybe the connection is not as authentic. It's easy to just disengage, right? Oh,
It
you
is.
know what, we're in a lockdown, right? Or, you know, what happened in the Capitol, you know, oh, the world's unsafe. Like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna feel uncomfortable, so I'm gonna disengage, right? But it's like, well, that doesn't mean that you can't use the phone, text, FaceTime, Zoom, you know, and use what you have to connect. You know, it's actually more important, you know, during the uncertainty to connect, because it's the relationships that will get you through any hardship. You know, a perfect example, you know, and this may be, you know, TMI, but, you know, I was running out of toilet paper during the toilet paper shortage, you know, and I couldn't find
Yeah.
any, and nothing was order, and, you know, people were being, you know, very selfish, you know, in ways of, you know, I got there first, so I'm going to fill up with, you know, I have a family of 3 and I'm going to be stocked up for years, you know. And I get it, because that's fear based. I get it.
Sure.
But I had a neighbor, you know, kind enough, you know, to be like, hey, you know, we got some, you know, but it's through building quality, you know, strong relationships that, you know, whether it's in business or in life or a pandemic, that will get you through, you know, and even something as small as those creature comforts, you know. I mean, that's a perfect example of building quality relationships, staying connected, being involved in people's lives. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Probably start a little bit before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic, is take part in people's lives. Take interest. Again, maybe it comes back to that theme of curiosity, you know?
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, and this is the distinction. I think when we're on the phone and the you know, we got emails around the screens and all this, we think like, oh wow, like we're so connected, we need to disengage. And that may be true, but isn't it just about figuring out the right engagement, which is actually the relationships that fill us up, that give us that passion, right? That fill us up
That's true.
and becomes
It's all about
purposeful.
people in the end. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what, you know, it's like, yeah, we need the screens and all that, but if it's the screen, but it's you, it's like, oh man, let's talk all day long. We fill each other up. We care for each other, you know? And it's just about, it's about that, about the quality of the relationships and filling up with those, not just, again, bulk, you know?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
thinking back to it, I mean, if anybody, if you or anybody else that's listening, if you open your phone right now, you probably have hundreds of contacts in your phone. And I would say 95%, most people probably never talk to throughout the year, or maybe talk to a handful of times. But I recently wrote that story in D Business Magazine a couple months back, and quoted you on it. I'd love for you to tell the story about when you just reaching out to people, texting from your couch, just sitting there on a hot LA day. Tell us about that, and what that provided just by those connections.
Yeah. So it goes back to having good, strong, quality relationships, and taking advantage of downtime. And that particular instance was, it was a hot summer day, and I learned this from somebody else that was close to a previous relationship. She would always be engaging with, professional people outside of work, like just simply through text message. And I was like, wow, I've actually never tried that, that strategy before.
Friends from set, just checking in with them and whatnot. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, just again, people that you want to work with and surround yourself with, being honest, and it's like, connect with them and check in. It's a very simple check-in. And I think, if you have the opportunity to do something on a deeper level, like, a phone call, a text, do it. Take the more personal route if it's available to you. Always go the personal route. And then in that personal route, find the balance of how you want to present yourself and what that other person is okay with. So if you find that other person's like never responding or whatnot, doesn't mean you can't, but if you find out they're more of an email, whatever avenue speaks to them as well. But yeah, so as far as the story goes, yeah, it was a hot summer day, here, in between jobs, and I just started reaching out. How you doing? Checking in. What's going on? Playing in golf lately? Like, the relationships that I built. And from that text, it was like, hey, what are you doing? There's a big feature coming up. You busy? Nope, I'm clearly laying here and in my boxers, sweating my butt off in the valley, in summertime, and yeah, landed a very, very big job opportunity that went for over a year, from a simple text message, like checking in.
Yeah, congrats.
So,
I mean, I think a lot of people can learn from those sort of situations. It's just, like you said, that human element. And I know that when I hear from people out of the blue, maybe I haven't heard from them in months or years even, it makes you feel just incredible inside. And you're like, wow, that person thought enough to reach out to me, to check in, that sort of thing. And I think that has a really strong effect.
oh yeah, no, absolutely.
Now you mentioned balance as well, and congrats again on that feature and many others. If anybody listening wants to look at Steffen's biography, just go to imdb.com. A lot of it's listed up there, but also, how do you balance yourself on set? I'm sure there's a number of people that get lost with A-list celebrities and trying to act a certain way or position themselves a certain way. What's the Steffen onset like compared to the Steffen offset?
The same guy. I mean,
love that answer.
There should be no different. I don't think there's a need to. I'm a huge believer in authenticity. I don't need to put on a performance. I think that if you work in Hollywood or a high caliber environment, right? You're trying to BS a BSer at that point. If you're trying to perform for performers, right? Like they'll sniff it out. And Absolutely. So if you want to perform at the highest caliber of work, it's got to be about the work. It's got to come from an authentic place. And so there should be no different. You should be the same as you are. I mean, maybe I speak differently with you than I would on set, or use different language or whatnot. But like overall, the essence of me. What's that?
I said, like you would speak to a boss compared to a friend.
Yeah. But my values or how I present myself is not. It shouldn't change. Mm-hmm. And that makes it easy.
Absolutely. I think it's about being comfortable with yourself as well. I think people take a lot of years to find that comfort and figure out, where they fit, and that says a lot about a person when they can be that same person onset and offset, and not be trying to constantly position themselves or make people feel any different way.
Absolutely. And I have to be honest, as part of my journey, yeah, I was a performer performing to perform before,
Sure.
so I made those mistakes. I was inauthentic, and it probably hurt a lot of relationships. It probably hurt a lot of opportunities. And so I just have to own that. But once you realize that you can be okay with yourself and have clarity with yourself and who you are, then actually it's like you will just skyrocket. And those that you aren't a good fit, you don't even have to worry about that. You don't have to manage other people in the relationship if it's just not there, and that's okay. You let go. You can let go of that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. So that way you can be the same. But it's taken me a while to get there. So I just want folks listening, I want to know it's not just like I showed up like I got it figured out. No, I got bloody and dusty and bruised, and so it's part of the journey. But I can say that now on this side of where I'm at. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to something you said earlier in the podcast. I know we're almost out of time, but you said that you're hired and fired every day, and that motivation. How do you keep a high level of motivation? Because I want to go back to a philosophy that I've mentioned in the podcast before, and something that I followed for a while. Don't tell yourself no. It's one of those things that constantly you have to say yes to yourself. You have to remove that barrier. How do you deal with that? How do you get over that internal self-talk?
Not holding on to any expectations, right? So I mean, there's an easy way to slippery slide with the don't, what was the phrase again? The don't tell yourself no.
No. Yeah.
So tell yourself no, right? Well, there's a delusional part of that aspect if you can't check, like, be real in that circumstance. There's a delusional part to that. And what I mean by that, and again, is that unrealistic expectations or fixed expectations.
Sure.
Right? So I'm not going to stop myself from going out if I want to do something, but I can't control how it falls or when it falls or who it falls with. If I want to go, I don't know, pick up a new skill, it's like, all right, I'm going to go do it. But and it's like, I'll present myself. I have no skills. I'll find an instructor. Maybe that doesn't work out, but I still hold the focus of not telling myself, no, I want to learn archery, and it's like you let it unfold. It doesn't let you stop you from the overall process of learning and growing, in your archery practice. Weird example. But, it's like, oh, I'm going to be the best archer in the world ever known. I mean, maybe, but I have to be honest, maybe not.
Sure. Absolutely.
So
I think you're right. You definitely don't want to be delusional about it, but
and delusional's not negating, and it don't mean that, if anyone's like, I'm not delusional, like, it doesn't mean like, but there's a certain aspect of again, clarity and checking in, with self.
I guess what I was saying is sometimes people think that, they might not be able to move forward, so they never even try, is what I'm really trying to get at. Mm-hmm. And so if you think that I really want to work with this person in Hollywood, for example, or I really want to sign this contract, but you're like, well, that will never happen, so I'm just going to do something else. That's really what I was getting towards there. Yeah. So
yeah.
One thing I wanted to I had one final question for you. What advice would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Advice. Oh man. Oh, I guess one of the staples that has come into my life, I would just leave with the quote from I'm a Stoic guy. I love the Stoics, and
Now, can you
uh,
explain what a Stoic is for a second for those that might not be aware?
yeah. So like you have the Marcus Aurelius. Um, oh gosh, now I'm drawing all the names, all the names. I should be more prepared for this.
No
Marcus
worries.
Aurelius is the first one that's coming to my mind right now.
Everyone can
Uh,
look it up. No
yeah,
worries.
look up Stoics, any of the Stoics. But basically, they were like, the early philosophers,
Okay.
and it coincided with like, when like Jesus was around and whatnot, as well, during that time. But they were the early thinkers. They were early. They championed thinking. Socrates, what Credo, all those guys. And Marcus Aurelius, I'll just leave with what has come into my life to like guide my life, and that is Marcus Aurelius's quote of "Life is short," life is short, and the fruit of life is to be of good character and acts for the common good. And for me, if I can accomplish and do those two things one day at a time for the rest of my life, I believe with every part of me, I will have a rich and fulfilling life in all aspects, with myself, with, a power greater than myself, with, my friendships, my business relationships, because it accounts for both self and external self,
I love
and
that.
it recognizes our brief time here too. So it creates a preciousness, it creates a gratitude, it creates a grounding effect to all the noise and the stimulus and everything go on. It kind of makes it very, very clear, and
That's
that to me is what I would probably want to leave folks with, is that quote. You can look it up. I probably butchered it, but it means everything to me, since it's come into my life.
That's incredible. Life is precious, and time is the only thing we can't buy. So, absolutely. Steph, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about you or connect with you?
Yeah, they can find me on Facebook, my first and last name, Steffen, Steffen, and Dziczek. Can I buy a vowel? And so, yeah, my first and last name on Facebook and Instagram, I'm the most active on. I do have a Twitter account as well, but yeah, say Facebook and Instagram is probably the biggest one.
All right. Same thing. IMDb at Steffen, Dziczek. All right. Got it. Please.
Yeah.
All
No,
right.
thank you very much, for having me today, Don. I really, really appreciate it, and was really looking forward to this. I hope there was something in there. And last, not only that quote, but what am I reading? Jocko Willnick's "Discipline Equals Freedom." That's what I'm reading currently, and it's really challenging me. It's little bite-sized snippets of like in your face, tidbits to kind of boost or question or get curious and just overall, kick some butt. It doesn't matter what discipline, whether it's, with family, friends, the boardroom, professionally, it's just that discipline. If you have discipline in anything, it will come. Whatever you have, whatever you lend discipline to will give you the freedom. So yeah, it's really great. Highly recommend it.
Discipline. That's a great word. A lot of people people don't use that enough. That's one of those things. That's one of the keys to success that people just kind of move past. So discipline and hard work.
Yeah, and that's another, again, one of those words that right? You can be in an environment that's very disciplined, and that's great. And then you leave that environment and it just, everything washes out. But true discipline, the discipline that he focuses on, and this is one of the keys, is internal discipline. So if your family is undisciplined and sloppy and whatever, it's like, sure, I can blame that and just take that on and go, yep, that's me. But there's that voice in you that knows what to do. We all have those two voices in our head, the one that's for us and the one that's kind of against us in a way. And it's like, he's like, no, I tell that other one to take a hike. I listen to the one that's for me, and true discipline comes from within. Nobody can give that to you. Nobody can teach it. They can teach you routines. Like but the person still has to show up to their own routine, right?
Sure.
You can have a perfect plan, but if you don't show up to execute it,
got to execute. Yeah.
It doesn't matter. So discipline from within is the true gift of this book that's challenging me to go, okay, let it come from within. Therefore, it can never be taken unless I choose to let it go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing. All right. Well, hey,
yeah.
Again for being here today, Steph. We really appreciate it. And thanks to all those who are listening. Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, whatever you prefer. And thanks for listening to the Impact and Influence podcast. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you very much.